David Roussève, welcome to Cultural Attache.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. So excited.
Well, and I think a lot of people who know your work are going to be excited about your new work, Becoming Daddy AF, which has its world premiere at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater in Pittsburgh on September 26th and 27th. And then for those on the West Coast, they'll get a chance to see it at the Nimoy as part of UCLA Center for the Art of Performances program this year on October 17th and 18th. So
Exactly.
it's a busy time, so I appreciate your taking time.
Absolutely. And it is a busy time, but an exciting one too.
Good. Well, I want to start by asking you about something you said in your keynote speech at UCLA Arts Commencement this year.
Yeah.
Thank you for mandating that I have the endless curiosity to satisfy your curiosity. And I think curiosity is of utmost importance. I think without it, we would be dead. So I want to know, as somebody who's been creating art for as long as you have, what were you most curious about when you started creating what became Becoming Daddy AF? And what, if any, answers did you personally get from its creation?
Oh my God. First of all, what great, juicy questions. I love that. And you must be my brother from another mother because curiosity is my guiding principle. I don't understand how everyone isn't out every day going, oh my gosh, what can I learn? What can I see? What can I do? But when I started Daddy AF, that's such a great question. I had just finished making a piece that was trying to capture the very complicated quote unquote truths or inner truths in the life of a gay out jazz composer named Billy Strayhorn, and who was a very complicated jazz musician, a genius, and responsible for a huge part of the Duke Ellington body of work. And I thought at that moment, when I finished that piece, I so enjoyed trying to excavate someone's internal domain and understand what are the philosophical and heartfelt and intellectual underpinnings of this man's body of work, uh, of who he is in the universe. And then once I finish that piece, I always take a moment to breathe deep and figure out if there's something else that I absolutely must speak on, and that becomes my new piece. And if there isn't, I always promise myself, then just stop because the work won't have the same vitality. And when I finished the Strayhorn piece, I was so taken with the idea of looking at an artist's body of work and an artist's narrative and an artist's family and genealogy as an amalgam of who that artist might be in their soul. And so I thought, I'm always trying to figure out how to go deeper and deeper with my work. And I thought returning to the self and using the principles that I applied to Billy Strayhorn might be a really great way for me to look deeply into my own life in order for me to think about the purpose of existence. And coupled with that, I have to say, I was very aware I actually don't consider this a dark comment. I should consider it quite joyous. I was very aware that I was old. Um, it wasn't a moment of, oh my God, I'm old. It was a moment of, oh, I have fewer time left on the planet than I've already lived. And since I have always been obsessed with the meaning of life and the meaning of love, because those two things speak synergistically to each other. And I thought, what a perfect time now that I'm aware of having lived a full life. Uh, what a perfect time to say, what's it all about, Alfie? Why was I here? Why did I, of all people, make it to 65 when, African American men, usually die or leave the planet by other means much younger. So many of the queer men in my generation, the AIDS pre any medication era, did not survive. And so I really felt contemplative about trying to reapply these artistic tools I had that I used towards Billy Strayhorn, and actually even more important, philosophically, taking a moment to be curious again, unabashedly curious about the big question of life. Why are we here? Uh, and so that was the genesis of the piece.
There are a lot of people who would hear that and go, "Oh my God, that would scare me to death to look that deeply into myself." Did you have any trepidation, any fear about excavating your whole genealogy and what all of that meant to who you are today?
Yeah, boy, those are great questions. I didn't in the beginning, but I very quickly had a whoa, WTF moment. What was I thinking? Yeah, and the piece has so many different components to it. Some of them emotionally are more challenging than others. It really revolves around the death by suicide of my former husband, Connor. My own experience at the moment as a high school student, the schools are being desegregated in Houston. And also, I was always really curious, to use that word again, about genealogy and legacy. What do we leave behind? And also, who are the people that have informed who we are and literally created us? Surely, if I'm trying to discover what's in my own heart and soul, surely the people who have come before me, who the immediate family gave me my psychological makeup in many ways, but also the back to the 14th century in Europe, which is how far I could trace one side of my family, which is very important. Uh, what did I receive from Lady Claudine de Lannoy, and my grandmother, 15 times removed, who was born in France in 1490? Nothing or everything? Um, and so also my genealogy makes, I think, such an interesting statement about the nature of, I would say, America, in that one side, my father's side, they were African American, but were, I discovered through my research, they were always free. They were never slaves, up and after 1791 at least. Because in 1791, a white Frenchman named Jean-Baptiste Roussève purchased his slave children and their slave mother and gave them all freedom. And so that led to the legacy of freedom that led to me. But needless to say, that side of the family is, I would say, considered to be a very uh, prominent, civic-minded, noble New Orleans family. They took great advantage of their freedom by trying to offer liberation and freedom to everyone else. But that family could be traced easily 6 lines back to the 1400s. The other side, which is the side I actually grew up with, were my grandparents were children of slaves picking cotton in Louisiana, who moved to Texas for a better life, scrubbing floors. And I could only trace that genealogy back to my grandfather's grandfather because the massive roadblock of slavery is impenetrable. So I thought how interesting that my biological body is an amalgam of these very differing American histories. And what, if anything, does that say about who I am or about the trials and tribulations, but also joys and opportunities that are invested in American culture?
It's a lot to unpack there. I'll do my best.
There it is.
But I'm going to start with something that's on your website about this work. You call it a portrait of a man defying death, but somehow unable to unabashedly embrace life. Now, if you're digging into yourself for this, I feel like I'm talking to a man who wholly can embrace life. At least that's
Mm.
that's that's the sense that I'm getting for you. So I guess my question for you is, has this has this work in some ways diverged from just an exploration about you and into something hopefully more universal?
Big question. Thank you for asking it. Absolutely. And I'm always aware, I started my whole career making autobiographical performance art in the 80s. And then my last solo was about 23 years ago. And now I'm returning to the self. And I always ask myself, um, why are you interested in exploring your life? And what is it that you can offer to others through the exploration of your life? So primary from the very beginning was that I was adamant that this not in the best ways that I can. You know, I'm sure an argument can be made that I failed in this respect, but to explore my own ancestry and inner terrain, to offer an opportunity for all of us to explore our ancestral and inner terrain, so that if I don't find something that's either universal or that other people can find themselves in, that seem familiar to other people, no matter the color or sexuality, then I probably wouldn't make the work. And this one, uh, what I came to realize is that I'm not trying to offer answers about what is the meaning of life. I'm trying to offer an opportunity for all of us to consider, for each of us, what might be the meaning of life. I do know that love emerged as the reason to live in my own biography, but I'm not insisting that that be true for you. Just posing the question, oh, to the audience, perhaps you can see yourself in the search for love. And if not, what else in this potpourri of narratives and facts can you access that would allow you to excavate your own inner terrain?
Right, but it strikes me as though you may not offer answers, but are you offering at least a window to catharsis, if not catharsis itself?
Yes, that again, I may not succeed. I hope that I do. I would never be, especially before a piece premieres, so bold as to say, I got it. I offer, I got it. But that is, Craig, thank you for asking, because it is what the piece is intended, is that by the end we all share in a cathartic moment. And the very last image in the piece, which I don't want to give away because it's a bit of a surprise, is meant to be the cathartic moment of the work. And also when I perform it on stage, and others who have seen my work, I'm sure some would agree and some would not agree with this. But for me, every time I do that moment, I think this is the crescendo of 40 years of trying to excavate, move forward, and find resonant artistic moments. It is so cathartic for me, and I'm hoping it involves visual imagery and movement. Uh, and I'm hoping that that combination of the narrative that has led up to this point, the metaphor that is happening about love, and the ways that my body is reacting become an accessible entree for the viewer. I'm hoping, because it is all about that cathartic moment.
Well, I saw an interview you did with the New York Times in December of 1999, and you talked about how important vulnerability was in your work. And I'm wondering, how vulnerable does performing Becoming Daddy AF require you to be?
Craig, I actually have to pause and take a deep breath before I answer, because very. And also, Becoming Daddy AF also returns me. I was always steeped in both dance and theater. And unabashedly, Becoming Daddy AF is certainly grounded in movement and dance, but the spine of it is more theatrical than my other work. And I'm speaking all the monologues, which I haven't done in a very long time. Uh, and I, uh, because my own, from my own acting studies way back in Houston, but most especially at Princeton, where I did I got my BA, and focused mostly in theater and dance, ironically. Uh, I had serious training in acting, and I'm always striving to be present and vulnerable on stage. And I do have to say that I was failing. It's really hard in the midst of these. Some of the I don't want to make the piece sound too somber. It has a lot of humor in it. It's like a roller coaster, but the deeper moments I don't shy away from. And I found that I was not vulnerable in those moments, and they were coming across as a little false, actually. So I had to really work to remain present and become vulnerable. And with that in mind, you're pointing out a key key principle of the piece, which is the mode of performing even changes from the beginning of the piece to the end. The beginning is intended to be my fallback, which is kind of bubbly, a little shut down. Um, and I was always like that 24/7 when I was younger. And the piece literally starts off with me telling the stories in the third person because that's how I lived life as a he. I was watching this other person go through life. Oh, what's he going to do now? And by the end of the piece, the bubbliness is gone. And I'm speaking in the first person, taking a deep breath, and hopefully I can speak to you directly as myself. So the whole principle of the piece is going from someone who's afraid of vulnerability to someone who is at least making the effort to remain as vulnerable as possible in the moment on stage, even.
But there's also been another thread in your work, which has been the idea of survival, which I think is a huge component of it. And certainly Saudade is an example of that. But as you get older and with everything that life has thrown at you, how important is survival, not just as a theme and a way of life?
Oh boy, that is such a great question. Thank you for these questions. These are all the core issues. And because survival is huge. Uh, I I think uh, uh, so my one thing I do know about my internal makeup is that I'm super happy with the things that I have managed to accomplish and will always be disappointed in the things that I didn't accomplish. I know in a perfect world it would be look at all the great things I've done. I'm satisfied, but for whatever the reason, I'm rarely satisfied. And I mention that because of late, in this moment of take stock of what life has meant, the success is not in the accomplishments, the success is simply in the survival. Um, and surviving is an amazing thing to do. And then eventually surviving leads to thriving, we would hope. But in the world of coming out in 1984 in the East Village in New York at uh, not even quite at the apex of the AIDS pandemic, but arriving there, uh, finding out through a bizarre sense of circumstances that I was HIV positive in 1992. It was absurd that I was HIV positive. In fact, I remember the doctor who gave me my test, which was at the moment I thought not the most ethical approach because I know that I'm positive. Every sign is there. And I remember her saying, what's your sexual history? And they're like, oh, there's no way you're HIV positive. But let me go get the test results. It was like, oh, yeah, yeah. I know this, I can feel it. Which I mention, not sex shaming, because I don't think there's any valid or invalid reason for it's just a virus that infects people. And if people had a lot of sex at that time, that's fabulous. It just so happens I just came out and I did it, and it was absurd. And I mentioned this is these boulders keep getting put in our path, and to emotionally and also physically survive HIV/AIDS is astounding. When probably, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say of my New York community, at least three-quarters of the gay men my age did not survive. And it allows us to say, well, is there a reason that I survived? What did I do with my time that allowed me to survive? And looking at the African American community, I'm past the normal freshness state that many African American men experience, and the gay community. So, yeah, surviving and the glorious accomplishment of surviving. That is quite a profound accomplishment. So I've come to take great joy in that and to celebrate surviving to age 65 and hopefully more.
I was going to say, and counting.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
Well, you mentioned, your first husband's suicide. You just brought up your HIV status. I know that there are other things that if people want to explore about your life that we don't have to discuss here, but there you've had a lot of things. You talked about the boulders put in your way. Does your work allow you to go from why did this happen to me to why did this happen for me?
Yes, and again, I know I'm a broken record at this point, but thank you for that question. You're just really helping to get to the core of the work and allow me to think about what's at the core of the work. And that is also the core of the piece. It's seminal to the piece. And if people don't take away from the piece, I will have failed. If the viewers don't come along with me on the journey of talking about these challenging issues, but if I leave them there to wallow in that, I won't have done my job. What I'm hoping is we go and we say, look at these really horrible things that have happened alongside the really joyous, funny things that have happened. But then the next monologue will be about, well, not pointing out how they have changed my life through the narrative. I show how, in reaction to these really challenging things in my own life and then generationally, how they have shaped me into being the person that I am now. And I never would have gone from the shell-shocked, somewhat two-dimensional guy to someone who still tries to be vulnerable, like the rest of it. Rest of us, it certainly isn't easy. But I never would have made the amount of progress that I made without these tragedies happening. And they inform who we are, and they bring us to a different place. They make me more hopeful. They make me more joyful, and hopefully that's reflected in the piece. And my undying belief in love from, oh my gosh, the boy, as I tell in the piece, who would spend hours looking out the bedroom window for Peter Pan to fly down. Oh my, I was convinced Peter would come. And not because he wanted to take me to Never Neverland, but what an act of love to fly across dimensions just to hold my hand. So I would sit by that window and watch for him. And then when my Peter Pan, the one who loves me eternally, did come, and that was Connor, my first husband, and then to have him exit the planet. So it brings about all these joys and all these lows. After Connor, I found my current husband at age 60, which is insane. The point is, the piece is trying to say you never know what life will bring, and you have to, as hard as it is, embrace or at least acknowledge the challenging things that have happened, because there are joys out there waiting for you as well.
Yeah, and just to correct one small thing you said, you know, their joys aren't over at 65. I'm just a year behind them.
Yes,
It's
yes.
I can't wait to see what the next 30 years are going to bring.
Yes, and that I have so much learned to do. When a short story when Stephen and I, Steve, my husband Stephen is 64, and I was thinking, A, I don't want to get married, and B, I'm happy single, which is great. I actually was happy single, but when we got together, when we would go to restaurants, because we're the same age, and everyone would say, "Oh, how sweet! How long have you been married?" And the first time we kind of looked at each other and said, "Oh, I know what they want to hear, so let's just give it to them." 30 years, and it's our anniversary. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to give you free dessert." Uh, but we told a friend that story, and she said, they might be more inspired if you said 6 months, because that means love returns to your life at every stage if you want it to. And so we started saying, yeah, oh, we're actually a new couple. We've only been together 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, and now it's 5. But we started to realize what a great miracle it is to find love at any stage in life, and that people were actually happier for us to realize we had both gone through divorces after 30 years of marriage, and then that it's always possible to find love, and that life does not stop at 60. We're just beginning as a couple. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. You know, the musical Hamilton, famously says, "Who lives, who dies, who tells your story?" And we live in a time where people tell their stories through, photos and videos on Instagram, or, truncated expressions of their lives, on other forms of social media. And as somebody who has been called by, Mark Murphy, who was at Red Cat, a master storyteller, what are your hopes and fears about how stories get told and people's abilities to sort of sit with a story that is longer than the attention span that social media requires of them?
Oh boy, once again, bingo on every front. It's the actual telling of the stories. It is asking someone to be focused on these stories for 90 minutes, which, 15 years ago, even 90 minutes would have been like, okay, well, that's the normal length of a piece. Maybe not necessarily a solo piece, but any dance concert or play will be even longer than 90 minutes. But it seems like a very big ask in the age of Instagram, Facebook, and social media. And to be honest, the piece was 2 hours. And I thought, no, we can't. I can't do that. And it's too hard physically, and we can't ask in this generation people to come in and stay focused for 2 hours. But it was an issue that we live in the world of immediacy, and everything is fleeting, including conversations. And ultimately, becoming Daddy AF wants to be a conversation with the audience. And I was very frightened to have a long. The piece is a reflection of, for better, and I admit for worse, the way that I communicate. You've probably noticed that I tend to start off very specific and then go on a very circuitous path and all these tangents, and then do return back to the answer, because true or not, and I'm sure it's a little bit of both. Uh, it feels like the answer to the question is an amalgam of all this background information as context. And so the piece itself reflects that internal makeup, in that it's diverging. It's, whoa, why are we in his family's genealogy? Whoa, why are we in New York, East Village, downtown dance, 1980? Whoa, why are we in UCLA, 2023? But it takes a very circuitous path in the telling of its story. And we are asking a lot of the viewer in 2025 to stick with us. And we did make a major effort. I have a phenomenal dramaturg named Charlotte Brathwaite. We're really making efforts to keep the piece moving along like a film. Let's bring in music to transition us right away to that next monologue. Oh, you can't park the train in the station because people will get off. But what if we slow down at the station and then we keep going? So we try to lure people in or invite them in, and then keep the piece rolling from one narrative to the other, and looking for the connections between those narratives in order to keep them engaged with the storytelling, which is no easy feat in 2025.
We're also living in a polarized time. You did an interview with LA Weekly in October of 2000, where you talked about, can the polemics of the work come from a discourse that is human and real on the level of the heart? It's like this week alone doesn't lead me to believe that any of that is possible. But I assume you wouldn't create if you weren't optimistic that it was.
Such an important question. Such an important question. I would answer that by saying the work is a reflection. It is, Craig, it's a reflection of my belief in the power of art and the humanities and human contact beyond the boundaries of sameness. Personally, I love meeting people who are different from me. And that is, we're all in our little bubbles now, so it's a little frightening. Um, but the bottom line, I delivered when I delivered the commencement speech this past June to the School of the Arts and Architecture at UCLA. I thought, what the heck am I going to offer these students right now when the world they're going into is really terrifying? And I thought, well, My one belief is that it is the arts and the humanities that are offering the dialogues that can actually save the world. And so, whether we accomplish it or not, we have to keep trying because the arts are doing what the world needs now, which is inviting us to see ourselves in the other, in someone. I hope that we'll have queer, African American, older, mature communities there. And then I hope we'll have young, white, straight, the antithesis of me there at the performances, because theater is an opportunity to see what unites us on the level of the heart. And that, for me, is in fact how we can save the world. I think people do not see the common humanity in each other and have started to kill each other. It's really sobering, but it makes me even more committed to what the arts and what becoming Daddy AF is trying to do. It's one of the reasons that I have to be very vulnerable in the piece because I'm telling people I'm taking a risk as well. I sometimes it's very hard to tell you these stories to people that I don't know, who I'm not sure that they will understand them at all. But I'm inviting you in to look at my life so that perhaps we can start to understand what we share as a common humanity.
Right. One more question for you, David. I know you founded Reality in 1989. 10 years later, you talked to the LA Times about how the best way for you to get the issues that were passionate to you out there was by being loud. Now that you're 65, where on the dial is the volume set and why?
Oh my gosh, what a great question. Because in the making of this piece, I actually acknowledged at one point, oh, this is not as loud as a lot of your work. I think you're wanting to have a, if not quieter, more introspective dialogue. Um, since that interview, I started meditating daily, and that doesn't inform my work spiritually, but it does inform my work in terms of what it means to be calm and go deep. And I did notice that the mood for me these days is less, I want to shake you up, and more, I'd like to us both to take a deep breath so that we can have a conversation together. And I did notice that there are uh, literally by loud, I mean a texture. There are definitely some angry, purposely angry in the piece moments, purposely angry because when the performer in me does calm down, it makes the ending much more poignant to see how much it meant to him. So it has uh, tension and volume, but it is not at the same decibel level as some of my other pieces. Um, and you know, Craig, as I talk to you, I'm thinking, I think the world around us is at the loudest decibel level it can possibly be. And so maybe I'm in the mood to just lower the volume. We've still got great music, great sound, hopefully dancing that will intrigue you, stories. But I'm not that interested in shouting them out because everyone is shouting these days. Maybe we need someone who can also whisper.